this two shot. Oops. I just showed that to the whole world. Anyways, it's a quick preview. Yeah, we'll show that, and then we'll kind of, I'll start. Oh, quick question. I forgot to answer. How do you pronounce your last name, AJ? Because I don't want to blow that.
It's Sciutto, like prosciutto, the ham.
Sciutto, okay.
Yeah, Sciutto.
Got it. So no skew, no sky.
No,
Sciutto.
no studio, no scaledio, no whatever the telemarketers call me. It's Sciutto, like prosciutto, the ham.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Producer. I am Noah Cadner. Glad to have you here with us this morning, and I'm hearing some extra feedback in my setup here. There we go. Glad you could join us. We have a very special show for you today, and I cannot wait to share it with you. But as people start streaming in, the first thing I would love to show you real quick is it looks like I'm in a little set from Fallout. I set this up custom just for the show, but I'm actually in a virtual production stage myself, a very small one. That's part of the living room. And, you can see it's nowhere near the amazing action that we're going to see on the show, but, it does the job. And without further ado, I would love to introduce two guests today. So as you're watching, just remember, I'm going to be doing the live switching of this show at the same time as well. So if things seem wonky, it's because I need more hands. But anyways, my two guests are, on the left, AJ Sciutto, and on the right, Catherine Bilhart. So now you're hearing virtual applause. Yay, thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're gonna take you guys one at a time. So, AJ, tell us what you did on Fallout. Tell us who you are first for people who don't know, and then what you did on Fallout.
Well, thanks for having me, Noah. I'm excited to be here. I am AJ Sciutto. I am currently the director of virtual production at Magnopus. Started my career in visual effects. I was at Sony ImageWorks for about 8 years. before coming over to Magnopus. And using that film industry experience helped build the entire virtual production system that we use to shoot The Lion King
Hmm.
with Jon Favreau. From that, kind of transitioned into working with the Mandalorian team, writing a bunch of tools with Epic Games for virtual production inside the engine, Westworld season 4, and then most recently, I was essentially acting as the executive producer on Fallout season 1.
Wow, that is awesome. And Catherine, you were part of this too. So let's hear your brief bio and your position on Fallout.
Sure, sure. So I'm a cinematographer that also worked in post visual effects and was able to transition into virtual production really early on, kind of between in like that 2016 to 2019 sort of era. And the lead up to kind of working on Fallout with AJ was kind of I had built a portfolio working on projects with ETC, on Ripple Effect, publishing white papers, jumped on Black Adam, directed my own film, worked with Zack Snyder briefly on Rebel Moon, and kind of it's a very compressed timeline. But early in the spring, when I was beginning work on Black Adam, I had started talking to Magnopus about potential projects. And so I was able to kind of consult with them until Fallout became a reality. And when the show was greenlit, we had been talking, and AJ was able to pull me on early into the project as a pioneering virtual production supervisor.
Okay, that's awesome. I am watching this show right now, and I'm loving it. And the good news is the virtual production is in the very first episode. So if you're one of the few people watching right now who hasn't already seen this show, I recommend you go out and watch it, and you'll see these shots right in the very beginning of this of the series. But we have some clips, so I'm going to start with a clip that just gives you a quick sense of what the setup looked like, and we can then chat with AJ about how this was put together, and then we'll go to Catherine on how it was used. But real quick, this is what the virtual production setup of Fallout looked like. So, AJ, what did we just see? Where is this stage? Give us some of its specs.
So we identified pretty early on that Jonah Nolan, the director of the season, wanted to shoot in New York. We worked with our partners, Manhattan Beach Studios and Fuse Technical Group, to design a volume that was going to be accommodating to all the kinds of styles that Jonah likes to shoot in. Some of the wraparound aspects of the horseshoe shape of the volume help with the lighting. Some of the longer, straighter walls help with longer walk and talks and allow for set design to take advantage of that kind of longer volume. So we designed the virtual production volume to be useful for all the sets that we knew we were going to be shooting across the season. We started construction in, I guess, March-ish, February, March of 2022. We started commissioning the volume. So Catherine and the Magnopus team were on set starting in May of 2022, and when I think we had our first shoot in June-ish. And we did 4 virtual sets of 3D real-time Unreal content inside the volume, and then in addition to some video playback for the Vertibird shoots that we used drone photography with 3 cameras arrays to get 180-degree footage, practical footage in drone, so that we can do playback systems for some of the stuff with the Vertibird.
Okay, and just so people understand, because there are shows like The Mandalorian where it's like, practically 50-50 the amount of material that's captured in the stage versus the amount of material that's captured, in real locations. So what would you say is kind of the percentage here?
It's hard to give an actual percentage. Every episode has its kind of own varying percentages. Some episodes have none of the virtual production work, and some have a majority of the virtual production work. I'd say that Jonah, as a filmmaker, is so in tune with the story and the way that the visual imagery represents itself on screen that we found the best use cases for virtual production specifically for this show that allowed for these huge, massive sets to be built in a much smaller space because the virtual production allowed that physical extension of the set to bleed into the virtual space. And so we really leveraged kind of the best aspects of an LED volume without being constrained by having an LED ceiling for lighting effects. We did a proper stage-based lighting system for that. And we kind of really leaned into the best aspects of virtual production from a lighting and cinematography perspective.
Awesome. So on that note, Catherine, how long were you on the production? And, because obviously this is a very complex show that shot in a lot of locations. From your perspective, how long were you actually working on it?
I would say like early consulting were just kind of popcorn conversations that were happening throughout the fall of, I guess, 2021. It's hard to remember the years because they all bleed together. But so I was on a short R&D project with John Dykstra at that time that winter. And so it wasn't until about March that I was able to come on and join the VAD team, but it was still very early on. So I worked in LA locally with Magnopus kind of in their office, and we did all of our prep together, and early like visualization, world building, the map paintings. I'd say probably between December and March were a lot of conversations about how to capture the aerial photography. So I just had a lot of time to plan some of those aspects kind of even leading into March. And I'd say another conversation like that as well was this big challenge. We're shooting on film, and that means that we have to really understand what the color management pipeline is going to be from our content creation, the content moving onto the display, how the film camera is going to receive that, how we'll know exactly what the film camera sees so we can anticipate dailies, and kind of stop anything drastic before it starts. Like, how do we catch stuff? So those are some of the longer, like earlier projects in development, kind of or conversations in development around that project. But it felt kind of seamless. Like it just sort of flowed from the early conversations in December all the way up through March, and then very quick prep into commissioning.
Nice. So one thing that kind of fascinated me watching this show is that not only is virtual production used, in a way that is meant to depict realistic scenes where you're, not aware that it's a virtual production shot, but it's actually incorporated into the story as a point in the initial episode. And before we even discuss that, I just want to show that clip for anybody that hasn't seen it, because to me this is hilarious, because everybody in this show actually knows they're on a virtual production stage in this scene. So let's check that out real quick.
To Lucy McLean, and to this marriage, and to hope. Let's dance. Hit it. Who can explain it? Who can tell you why? Fools give you reason. Wise men.
Okay, so to me that's awesome, because not only do they know they're on a stage, but they think they're using like what appears to be some kind of like, retro futuristic film projector to make this amazingly seamless looking backdrop. How was, I have so many questions, but I mean, did that come out of the writing? Like they saw the virtual production possibilities and like, hey, let's write that into the story? Or was that always part of the plan? And I don't know, maybe Amy, AJ would know this better, but I'll go to you.
Yeah, so once we did Westworld season 4 with Jonah. He brought his showrunners for Fallout to kind of come see how this world ends up working in a virtual production stage, and they really wanted to like lean into it and kind of write to it and kind of build that into the story of how the vault is projection-based technology from the 1950s with a film camera projecting imagery onto the walls that make the vault dwellers feel like they are actually in a Nebraskan farm. So they wrote that into the season very, very early, which was great because it was like a great out of the gate kind of testing of the volume methodologies for not just the virtual production crew, but also for the actual production crew of learning how to schedule, learning how to review content, learning how to do film tests, learning how to light, learning how to do shoot days in a volume. This was the first time for a lot of the folks on the production crew. On the bad side of things, it was fun because the challenge presented to us was we have a volume of a certain size. We have an environment that needs to be a little bit bigger than the volume. And then we have a virtual extension of that environment that needs to be even bigger. Because if you look at the actual physical set pieces that you showed in some of the photos you showed, Noah, there's about 6 to 8 layers of practical physical corn on set, but that wouldn't be enough to feed a vault of that size. And so as the physical set blends into the virtual set, we had to add another dozen or 2 dozen rows of 3D corn that actually parallaxed as if it was physically on set before we get to the kind of 2D corn, which is the matte painting extension of said corn. And as one of the things we've learned in virtual production, like over the years, has been working on LED volumes. It's that blending of the physical to virtual that is the thing that gives it the most realism, that really convinces the audience that there's something there. And hopefully, when watching the show, it was hard to kind of see where the 3D corn met the 3D physical corn met the 3D virtual corn, which then met the 2D virtual corn. And if that was the case, then we did our jobs right.
It's impressive because, I mean, yeah, that's kind of layers upon layers practically. But Catherine, what is that like? I mean, obviously, when we're going to show the next couple of clips, the virtual production stage is not meant to be noticeable. But how does that feel as the supervisor of these things on set when you're basically, we need to reveal the artifice of this screen, but we're also using it to be realistic at the same time. I mean, that seems confusing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because on reflection, kind of hindsight, honestly, there's some forgiveness in it's like supervising stylistic content that's not intended to be photoreal. In some aspects, it's a little bit more forgiving, but it does have its own challenges, which is making sure that you're staying grounded in the world and the tone of the project. And it means that, the creative reviews that you're having with the director are really important because they see the final image in their mind. And so making sure that you're carving out the time to work with them is really important. And I would say that like the burn effect was part of that as well. Like, staying grounded in some of the photorealism that we were adding to those scenes, like the actual texture of burning celluloid and recreating Houdini and trying to get that on the wall as fast as possible. But then incorporating that back into like a stylistic, and to AJ's point, complex build out of content from 2D to 3D corn to physical corn was interesting. So it became what we ended up, once we kind of found a true north, it was like staying in that true north and then making sure that we were technically accurate. It was like this crazy needle between technically accurate and like, yes, big picture. This is coming together. So
one other thing that you mentioned, and I don't know if this is a better one for AJ or for Catherine, but a lot of these productions shoot on digital cameras because when you're dealing with something like an LED wall, it's very tricky to make sure that the shutter of the camera is in sync with the display of the screen, and otherwise you end up with like scan lines or other weird artifacting. But if you're shooting film, you're not really seeing what that looks like until the next day and it's developed and you've already shot your day. So how do you mitigate that risk? I'll just throw it over to both. Who wants to take that one?
I feel compelled to take this because
take that one.
it was a big challenge that I spearheaded on the project. Well, to your point, that's correct. And so the way to kind of work around this was to pull a digital reference camera on set. And there were a couple different ones that we tried, and we ended up landing on the Sony Venice by the end of the show. But on one hand, I'd also say this was part of a learning curve that all of production learned together, because initially asking for these things was sort of, there's not a lot of pushback, but just kind of those typical questions of like, oh, wow, that really expands the budget in a way that we might not have been expecting. Right. You really need to justify this. So the digital reference camera, the strategy there was to be able to, one, kind of know for sure, if we knew through a digital reference camera that the whole system was calibrated and we could find a true north. We had sort of our true north technical let, and then we were paired with like a trusted DIT from the DP that understood the DP's sensibility and interpretation of the film stock that we were using. And so that person was able to build a dailies let, or like what the film look might be once we saw the ungraded film in dailies. And so in the digital reference camera, we kind of were able to toggle between our technical calibration and our film let. And then some of the tricky thing in an LED volume also is like how all of the components play a role in all these minor adjustments. So one of the learning curves as well was like the DIT and I coming up to an agreement about like which pieces we were going to lean into manipulating and which ones we were going to leave the same. And so that was sort of interesting as well. And in the early episodes, we definitely played around with adjusting the brightness value of the wall, which was interesting as well. I mean, because what you end up realizing is that the brightness of the wall also impacts the level of saturation and the values of color that you're getting off the wall. And I'd say like a hidden tool early on that we used that I'm probably going to incorporate into my workflows going forward was a Flanders scientific monitor just during that True North technical process, because it also was a way to see one-to-one that the camera was seeing red, the display was displaying red, the camera was seeing red, and the monitor was seeing red at the correct value. So we used a lot of different things in the beginning to try to really just make sure. But that it was cool. And then I feel like as we kind of got into the flow of the shoot, the director has such a strong eye for what they're looking for, and he can really understand a film grade digital monitor, if that makes sense. So he felt like he was getting what he needed. I had myself and the DP and the DIT had a way to look at a digital reference camera, and then we could fairly quickly come to an agreement of, yes, this is coming together. We like it. So
Right on. So why don't we look at one more clip, because we're already 2/3 of the way through this show, if you can believe it. Wow. So, okay, here's a clip that shows virtual production now used not as a visible artifice to the characters in the show, but as actual set extensions. So pop that on. Let's take a look.
Stop! Lucy! Are you mad?
Young lady, come back here right away.
Lucy! Lucy, no!
All right, I love that scene, and yeah, Lucy, wow, she changes so much in the story. So AJ, give us a hint, like what in that setup is real, what is virtual set, how is it accomplished?
Yeah, so kind of like building off of what I mentioned about the corn, for us, finding that blend between physical and virtual is always going to be the thing that helps let the audience's eye kind of transition into just believing the whole set is real and practical. So anything that a person has to touch on set needs to be physical. So that's the handrails, that's the walkway, the plank, that's the control mechanisms, and that's the door itself. But anything that was beyond kind of the gangway, the virtual vault interior, the extension behind the vault with the kind of piles of boxes back there, all that was virtual. In addition to, on this set, we had a really fun opportunity to play with depth going like down, right? Down in the sea, I guess was what you'd say. And so we had built for this specific LED volume what we called wild walls, were these like 8x6 articulating walls of LED panels that we have built tracking systems for, that integrated with tracking systems for the camera and integrated Unreal systems, so that we could roll these wild walls around the set to where we needed them. And as they were being tracked, the content on them would dynamically change as they moved around the set based on where they should be projecting extensions from the content. And so we use those to help kind of convince the filmmaking crew how to frame the action based on what's happening, 300 feet below the gangway, based on this kind of giant cavern. And so meeting with the filmmakers and deciding this was going to be a great set because it was such a pivotal moment in the show as she leaves the vault for the first time, we designed the set the way it was, to pretty much great satisfaction on the filmmaking team. They found that to be the most successful set shoot that we had done in the volume. It alleviated the fact that they didn't have to go find a giant cavern to go shoot in. They didn't have to build a giant set piece out on some stage somewhere. It really kind of created this essence of being on a practical set. And we had a lot of fun shooting in there.
Yeah, no, my hat's off. When I watched that scene, I was, because I'm so used to seeing things staged around the screen that I was just like ready to kind of guess where the screen is. But then I'm like, wait a minute, this is a 360 screen? Like no, that's a real set. So yeah, had me totally fooled. One thing I wanted to ask to Catherine, because we were talking about this before the show, but there's also a pretty significant lighting gag going on, because obviously when the vault door opens up, you're seeing the outside world with the sun blasting through. But that obviously wasn't opening out to the real outside world. So how was that achieved?
Yeah, it was amazing. So they had probably like a 20K outside that vault door, and we shot multi-camera for some of it. Most of it, I think, in there was it was kind of at least 2 or 3 cameras. So we were getting reverses and her performance at the same time. And what's cool about the reverses, when you're looking back over her shoulder into the vault, is the depth. And so to AJ's point earlier about like how we designed the wall to be sort of big enough for all these scenes, the room was deep enough so that the light, the physical light, was hitting the actors properly. And then we had enough time to dial in the light with our virtual gaffer and virtual DP, Devin and Jeremy, to match the lighting exactly as it would hit the back wall of the vault. And so you're seeing real virtual lighting matching physical lighting. And the gag that we talked about was when the vault door, I think probably in this cut, it's probably shutting because it's already opened. Mm-hmm. There is a reverse where you see the shadow move across the wall. That's something that our team built and animated, and we, triggered an actual effect so that all that interactive lighting and shadow would happen at the same time. But I think that's sort of the power of having physically based lighting. And to AJ's point as well about the production team liking it, I remember that Stuart, our DP, felt like in that scene, he really saw the beauty of the physical lighting and virtual lighting come together. He felt like it was reacting the way that it should. And so that was a great memory to have on set.
No, I agree. And obviously that's such a key moment that happened right there as well. Because, this is the first time we're kind of seeing the outside world from Lucy's perspective. Believe it or not,
I'd like to just give a quick shout out also, because we never work in a vacuum in virtual production. It's, Jay Worth and Andrea Knoll and the thousands of VFX artists who worked on all these shots helped make that set and all the other sets really shine. So I want to just give a big shout out to the visual effects team to kind of put that little extra sparkle to finish the set extensions and make it all work.
Oh yeah, no, obviously this is not the kind of show I could produce in my living room, but I'm impressed all the same. So okay, we're almost at the end of the show, so I have one last clip to get to that features virtual production again from the opening episode, and let's take a look. Okay, so this is kind of Maximus going on his first mission in a vertibird, cool looking, very cool looking helicopter kind of device. Obviously, you've got some VFX shots when you see it from the outside, but in the inside, it's a pretty convincing look that this feels like an open air. I mean, it looks like any like real helicopter scene you might have seen from earlier films that kind of have that look. How was that achieved?
The shooting in a car, shooting like a process volume for car work, for photography, for a helicopter, for inside aerial work. That is, I think, where virtual production can really shine the most. It's those reflections and light fall off and detail you get in the practical set that is blending where the virtual set lighting is kind of influencing the practical set. That is something that is very, very difficult to do in visual effects, especially when you have a bulbous circular glass cockpit that would be reflecting a green screen in all sorts of weird angles that would require a lot of cleanup and paint to do through a green screen. You get all that for free in LED volume because the lighting is coming from truly all around you. So I'll let Catherine talk about the capture methodology, since we worked a lot with the drone photographers to figure out how the camera is going to work to shoot the plate photography. But shooting the actual content in the volume really kind of lends itself to one of the best things about virtual production, which is the lighting influence on hard surface objects and reflective materials really kind of give that production value of it being a practical shoot.
Yeah, no, it really looked great, and it got me thinking like, is this like one of those? I mean, I thought maybe they shot in a real helicopter and they just cut to the outside
Yeah.
for the look of that. But I mean, I've seen so many of those scenes that it feels like you're really in the helicopter in motion. That it just really captured that.
Totally. Yeah, so it was it was kind of a process planning out the aerial photography. Most of the original shoots for the block one of shooting were actually captured in a helicopter. So they did kind of a traditional helicopter shoot, and Kaylin Ray, Kat Harris, and I helped tech viz out the exact camera rig that they would need and help them figure out the camera flight paths. It was like a real collaboration with everyone, DP, Howard Cummings, Jay Worth, everybody, to kind of figure out from a production design perspective what flight paths they wanted. So we had independent meetings choosing and casting landscapes. I would help inform the camera packages and kind of like the technical camera like limitations and strengths, and then our tech viz team was able to kind of in Unreal show visual examples constantly to the filmmaker to kind of show, like, especially with visual effects, this is the field of view. And it was really nice to have all that tech viz early on, because we could say, like, with this array, you'll probably want to do 1 to 2 passes. You'll probably want to get more of the ground because you can always fill in sky later, or get another pass with sky. But that way the gaps in the sphere of what you're shooting with this field of view. And then there are like 2 other points. One other point about plate photography that's just from a supervising point of view that people should be aware of is, like, I think people always think 2D, it's easier, it's plug and play. There's just a different workflow, and you need to still carve out time to receive the content, test the content, see it at scale on the LED wall, because you might have a stitch that you need to have redone. And because there's a little bit of a visual effects pipeline there, you just need to make sure that you've blocked in the time to do that. And then from a creative perspective, I just wanted to share that seeing the shots come together in camera was magic. And one thing that's really special about designing shots with a visual effects perspective, whether you're a cinematographer, whether you are a visual effects soup, whether you're a virtual production supervisor, one of the most fun tricks of the trade is misdirection. And I loved that in these shots, something that really helped sell it, like to your point, Noah, was the lighting, because the way that the angle of light, or the camera movement and the angle of light, directed your eye really kept you focused on the action and the story, and it let the background fall into the background where it should be. And I thought that all the components came together very nicely in those shots. And then to AJ's point, the drone photography came in. We shot drones on set as a way to have photography that matched the feel of a helicopter. So that helped with the physics of those shots as well. So I don't know, a lot of fun things with the helicopter process shot. Sign me up.
Yeah, no, it looked great. And, you know, I'm sure it's also nice for the actors to be able to be in that environment and not have to feel like, you know, they're about to fall out of this dangerous helicopter. So that's always nice.
Yes.
All right. Well, believe it or not, we're at the end of our show. Like I said, I said this was a very brisk show. And I looked through the chats, and there's no questions from anybody. They're all just high-fiving and saying how awesome we all are. So, well, most of you guys, I'm just for the ride. But I think we're basically at the end of the show. Any last thoughts that we should get to before we sign off? Guys, you guys are silent.
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time working on the show. The filmmaking team on the show is amazing. Jonah, I think, is one of the most brilliant filmmakers in Hollywood. And if and when a season 2 happens, we'd be excited to potentially talk about that.
Heck yeah, me too.
Yeah, agreed. It was amazing. It was an amazing production team to work with. And then, you know, working for me with Magnopus and that entire team was phenomenal. And I just want to honor everybody who worked on the project. There were definitely over like 30 of us. So it was quite a large team that made all of this possible.
And you're richly rewarded. I keep hearing this show keeps breaking all of its Nielsen records for these kinds of things. So fantastic work. And I still have a few more episodes myself to get through, so no spoilers, anybody, but I'm loving it so far. Anyways, thank you again for everybody who watched us. We were actually simulcasting on LinkedIn and YouTube for this episode, so, you know, thank you again for wherever you watched us. We appreciate you all very much, and stay tuned for more shows, and go see Fallout if you haven't already. Thanks, and have a good day.